Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me today on the AgentXcel podcast. And today I'm doing a solo show. Topic is Life by Design, Money Edition. I have had about 4 different conversations this week with realtors about different topics, but they all led back to the conversation of money. And so I know I talk a lot about finances and goal planning on this podcast, but this show is to kind of wrap up those conversations that I had. And it's interesting how they all started off in different places, but they all, in my head, went through the funnel of life by design. So I explained that to them, and I decided that this would be a podcast that I thought a lot of people would enjoy. And I hope you guys enjoy the show. So on today's show, I want to talk about life by design. And when I say life by design, there's a few different things I think of. There's kind of a few different pillars to me. There's finances. There's my relationship with God. There's my relationships with my wife and my family and my friends. And then there's my health. So there's different pillars of life by design. Today's podcast, I want to talk specifically about finances and money. And the reason why this topic got brought up for today's show was I've had 4 conversations in the last week with some people that I know. And it was just conversations around finances. And it's interesting where each conversation to me led back to the same conversation, but how it started was different. So I want to go over some of these conversations and what people are thinking so that we can all realize that we think the same things and we sometimes just don't talk about them with everybody. So I want to, like I said, just go over a few different scenarios and then we'll go into what my solution to almost all of them was. It was like the same exact conversation. So I was at an event about 5-6 days ago, and this guy came up to me afterwards that I kind of knew. And we've been talking for the last, few weeks. And we were talking about closing transactions. And he looked at me and said, you know what? I really only need to close one home a month. And I said, oh, okay. I said, what's the reason for that? And he said, well, I really don't have any debt. And I really don't have like a lavish lifestyle. And so I just need to close one home a month. And that one was really interesting to me because I was sitting there and thinking, okay, so the one closing one home a month was stemming from the amount of bills that this person had to pay. And then I started just thinking in my head and I'm just going through the scenarios and I'm like, wow, like people really think that you're supposed to go sign up for debt and then go work really hard to figure out how to pay for it. And so I was thinking, okay, so I told this person at 24, I basically a kid, and I told him, you know what, when you say that you don't have, that you only have to close one house a month and you don't have a lot of debt, I would use that as your like biggest asset right now. Meaning, there's a lot of people who have to go make $100, $200, $300,000 a year just to keep up with their lifestyle, the bills they've signed up for, kids' events that they have, saving for college, new cars. And so I was letting them know, I said, hey, here's the deal. Why don't you take this as an asset that you haven't signed up for a lot of debt? So that's really cool. And because I think everybody knows how many homes they have to close a month to keep up with their bills. And then they know how many homes they have to close to keep up with their lifestyle. But I was telling them, you can actually just close deals and stack cash. You could be buying investments in your 24. You could be, stacking cash, buying investments, and you could be out of this game sooner than most. And so that was one conversation I had this week of somebody who was limiting their transactions based on basically what they were telling me is, I don't have a lot of debt, so why do I need to close a lot of homes? And I'm like, well, you could, just stack cash and be done early. And here's what I told this person. I said, and I asked him these questions there. And I said, how much do you have? And I don't know if I should ask these questions, but when these people come to me in these scenarios, I feel it's what I'm supposed to do. I don't have a lot of casual conversations in my life. So when somebody comes up to me and has this conversation with me, I'll go deeper and I'll usually preface it as, hey, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Typically people do, but I said, hey, let me ask you, like, do you have money coming in through like any type of retirement accounts? Do you have any assets that you own? And he's like, no, not really. I said, okay, so when you're 82, do you like, will it just still be one home that you have to close? And he's like, I could just start to see the wheels turning in his brain. And I was asking him, hey, like, when you're 90, are you just gonna have to sell one home a month? Meaning, I told him it's gonna catch up to you. And so I told him this is my framework and this is how I worked when I was younger. I said, I just want to meet my older self, and for my older self to say, hey, man, I'm proud of you. I'm super proud of what you did. You did good. You made some mistakes, but you were always trying. I'm proud of you because, if you just get to that older person and you can't say that you're proud of yourself for trying, I think that's where a lot of regret will come in. And so I just looked at him and said, hey, work every day for your 82-year-old version of you and stop working for your 24-year-old no debt version of you. And so I applauded him with, that's really cool that you have no debt, but I think that you could be thinking bigger as far as what you could be doing with having no debt. Next story, had this conversation on the phone with a friend, and we were talking about, he had called me and we were talking about setting some goals. And it was just a conversation, I feel, that was over like financial thermostats. Like, hey, Chris, when I get to like 3 pending transactions a month, that's usually when I let my foot off the gas. And so I was having a conversation with this person about, that book that I recently read, 10X is easier than 2X. And really what that meant to me was, well, then that's all the goal is. Meaning if the foot's let off the gas at 3 transactions, then you feel as if that's where you're supposed to be. And that's what you're supposed to have at the end of the year. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like 100% want to say there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, if that is your goal, great. Like, I never get involved in people's goals. I'm like, what is your goal? And did you hit it? It's never change your goal type stuff. Usually. Now, I guess I shouldn't say that. There are times where, like the first story where I was trying to raise this guy's bar, but typically I'm not. Like, as long as someone has a clear set path of a goal, I'm trying to support it. And it doesn't have to be anybody else's goals. But when I was on the phone with this person, we were talking about that, hey, I closed 3 transactions, let my foot off the gas. But here's the deal. It was, I get to the end of the year and I'm not always, as happy as I thought I should be, or I don't feel like I got to where I needed to be. And that's where I would say the goal is not 3 then, meaning if you get to the end of the year and that didn't do it, then there were other things that you were wanting to accomplish, maybe didn't have the money to do so. And now you need to start figuring out a framework, which I'm going to go into in this podcast on how you can develop a framework to get past that. So that conversation to me was basically on like financial thermostats, how we'll get to a certain level and then we feel like we got to come down, or we'll get below that and we feel like we got to speed up. And I've been like this in my real estate career where, I'll have a certain amount of pendings closing and I'm like, I'm chill, I'm good. Or I'll get below a certain amount of closing. I'm like, gas, like all gas, we've got to get deals closing. And that just shows you that there is a thermostat that we set in our life. Another one, I had a conversation this week with a realtor, and it was over, anxiety. And I'd let them know, I said, anxiety, I think creeps in a few different ways. And I know people struggle with this, and I don't want to be insensitive to that. But I said, a lot of times I think it comes in because, it's things that we might need to be, we should be doing that we know we need to be doing and we're not doing. I think that's where a lot of it comes from. Now, I know there's other types of anxiety. But I know I almost sometimes want to ask people when they tell me that they're having anxiety, like, is this truly anxiety? Meaning, where is this coming from? And then a lot of times what you'll find out when you ask that is, where is this coming from? It's just, oh, I need to be doing this and I'm not. And I'm like, man, that seems like how we just said that there's a cure for that. If I should be doing this, but I'm not. I don't think that should lead to anxiety. I think that should lead, I feel like the medicine for that is action, and just start doing that. And I feel like if you just do that and fail forward, you're going to feel better. But this conversation was on anxiety. And I've actually had a few conversations this week with realtors on anxiety and money. And so that's sometimes where this stems from, So like I said, I'm just giving you a few stories. Like, this is all within the last week and why I wanted to do this podcast. The next one was placing bets, meaning this person has a pretty good amount of liquidity and places these bets where they put the money in one spot. And then they've got to go, they're placing a bet and doing a business venture, and then the money's got to come back. And, those are times where I've been there as well, where, maybe it's not leveraging yourself with debt, but you're spending a lot of your cash that you have on one project. And that can lead to, this restless nights where you're trying to figure out how that's going to come back. And a lot of times it does, but was it worth the process? And so there's how this podcast started. Like, I always want to let you guys know, like, that's the conversations I was having this week. And I decided, hey, let's go into this. I did a podcast like this before, but I felt like, especially with this, we've got a few more months of this year. I think this is more of a goal planning, but I call it life by design. So, and I want to mention again, 10X is easier than 2X, that book that really changed a lot of things that I'm doing. And it talks about how your end goal is the thing that will drive you today. So if your end goal is to, let's say, sell 10 homes, your actions today will determine that. If your goal is to close 100 homes, you have to start doing different things today. So it really is going to be what your goal is, and writing what you have to do down. Like, that's going to push you to be a different version of yourself. So here's what I did with one of the people that I talked to on the phone. And this one was over, when I closed 3 transactions, I feel comfortable. And so here's how I broke it down for him. And people who have listened to my show since the beginning, they've probably heard some type of framework like this, and then that's fine. But I think it's something that we need to discuss. You have to know, and this sounds counterproductive. You're going to be like, well, Chris, is this a budgeting class? And I'm telling you, to get where you want to go in life financially, you've got to start here. One, you've got to know what is your burn rate in your business? Like, within reason. I mean, we don't have to be to the pennies, but you've got to know a burn rate. Like, I was on the Zoom yesterday with my bookkeeper, and every single month for about 30 minutes, we go through my P&L, my profit and loss, and we go through some things. And at the end of the month, she'll say, your burn rate right now is averaging X amount. So I know every single month what I have to make to keep up with my employees' payroll, my own personal payroll, and all the expenses in my business. So that's my business burn rate. It's all my bills, my salaries for employees, my salary. That's a burn rate. So I know that is like that's a number that I have to hit to not be negative, right? You've got to know that. Now, here's the deal. Most people will never know that. They just won't sit down for 3 hours and figure out all these numbers. And I really think that if you don't sit down and figure out these numbers, I don't think anything else will happen. I think it's very hard to get to the next steps without knowing this. And so to do that, it's very simple. Go into your bank account and print off your bank statements for the last few months and just go through and start seeing what's a reoccurring charge, what's not, and then figure out roughly what your burn rate is. Then you've got to go over into your personal life. Figure out what your burn rate is there. We know in our household what our burn rate is, and it's not exact. You need to have, there's ranges. So you've got to go on the high side. There's months where we do different things. So it's not always the same number, but you do have to get a number. You've got to look and say, hey, like, this is my burn rate for things that are just needed, like utilities and water and groceries and gasoline. Like, we've got to know the burn rate for the bare necessities. Then we've got to have our burn rate for our gym and the Netflix and all that kind of stuff. Not things that we need, but things that we've signed up for, mortgage payments. You got to go through all of this. So you've got to know now what's your burn rate in your personal life. Then get to the third column. And now, what do you want to do for entertainment? To live a quality life, what's your version of you that you want? Like, what do you've got to make to do the type of entertainment you want? And this is all going to make sense as we build up this framework. What do you want to do? Like, do you want to have $300 a week to go dinners and go do stuff? Or do you want to have 500 a week? Or do you want to have 1,000 a week? This is for you to write your story. But what do you need? What's the burn rate in entertainment every single month? And then have a travel burn rate. What's your burn rate in travel every single month? And maybe someone's like, hey, I don't travel every single month, Chris. Well, if you travel every quarter and it costs you a certain amount, then divide that by 3. Figure out what you've got to save on a monthly basis to travel the way you want to travel. Can you see how this is a life by design? There are some people who just they go close a certain amount of homes. How many ever come I'm going to do? And well, I don't know what my burn rate is in my business. Oh man, I don't know how much I spend on my personal life, and I don't know how much I spend on my credit card and on food. And oh well, I don't know. I just went on that trip. It's just a lot of times we're doing this stuff. We just don't know what the burn rate is. And why you want to do this is because you can start gamifying this and play a really cool game with this and put yourself in a different mindset. So business bills, personal bills, entertainment, travel. It's what's your burn rate. You want to know at the end of the month. Now, here's the deal. If this worries you and you don't feel like you're being able to keep up with that and you're doing it, I would have to say a lot of people out there, and there's no judgment in the statement. Please note that. I'm here to help. There's no judgment in the statement, but there are many, many, many people putting this stuff on a credit card and it's not getting paid off at the end of the month, meaning their lifestyle is being kept up by a credit card that has a high interest rate that's going to keep people in a position where they can never get out of that actual race. So this is why I'm addressing this right now. So your credit card payments and things like that, if you are in debt, that would be included in your personal bills burn rate. Like, what is the payment that you've got to pay on a monthly basis? So get your burn rates: business, personal, entertainment, travel. Now, after I do that, my next thing is, what do I want? Like, what do I want? What do I want, and what does that cost? Meaning, the other stuff was just like me living my life: business, burn rate, personal bills, entertainment, travel. Now, here's the deal. You can see that in those 4 columns, business, personal, entertainment, and travel, there is still a good life being had. There's a lot of people living really good lives and not putting it on any type of debt, right? So I am saying now, how do we, if our active income is paying for that, if we're going to work with our human energy for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day to get that money through, to then have those burn rates in those 4 buckets, how do we ever stop active income? The only way we can ever stop active income is if we get enough through our door to start giving us money to pay for our burn rate. So that's actually that's the goal to me, is how do you get enough passively coming through a month to cover your business bills, your personal bills, your entertainment, and your travel? That would be it, right? But when you're in that grind season or that building season, you've got to now, after you figure out what those burn rates are in those 4 columns, you then got to start figuring out, what do I want? And everybody doesn't want the same thing. So for me, I knew at about probably 34 or 35, I wanted to buy more residential homes. I wanted to buy more homes because I knew that I needed to have rents coming through my door on the first, so that I could get to a spot where I didn't have to work as much and life was free. So it's, what do you want? Even if it's stuff where it's like, hey, I want a new car. Like, we've got to buy this stuff, right? So it's like, we've got to start looking at this stuff and saying, do we have to sign up for debt anymore? Or could we say like, hey, I want this truck and it costs $72,000 and I want it in a year. So I need to make, after my business, personal, entertainment, and travel, I need to make additionally this much money so that I can buy that with cash. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe it's, I want to buy an investment property. I need $60,000 down. So you need to now make enough for your business bills, personal bills, entertainment, travel, and $60,000 for the investment property. It doesn't matter what you want. It's just know what you want. So that's why I say, like, I don't get in people's business on what they want. It's just, I want to ask people, what do you want? And then it's not, let's change that. It's, okay, well, that's what you want. Let's go get that. Now, next, I want to go into the no vision boards. People have heard me say this before. I'm not a, and when I say that, please note, I have a lot of boards in my office and they're not necessarily vision boards. The reason why I think that those can go, I think they can go a little bit south, and this is totally personal opinion. Please note, like, if you have a vision board on your wall and it motivates you, please keep it up. Like, this is just a podcast where I give my opinions. And so for vision boards, where I think that they go wrong for me is it's putting a lot of things up on the vision board. It's this car and it's that house and it's this vacation, and almost everything on the vision board consists of money. And so how I look at a vision board is, for me, it scatters my brain, because when I look at a vision board, I just look at it from the aspect of, what does all this cost to achieve? and let's just say there's a vision board out there and on it is $3 million worth of stuff. Well, I would say over this next year, are you waiting to make all the money on that vision board and then you're going to go buy that all at once? I would say no. So I would look at that vision board if you have one and say, what logically right now at my stage of life do I want next? And then look at that and say, that's what I'm working for. Not the car and the jet ski and the boat and the investment property and the cruises with the family, all that stuff. If once you add that up, that to me can't be the goal for the year, because you're not gonna buy this 10% and that 10% and this 10%. That would be buying them actually on like debt. So if you're buying these things with cash, you would have to be saying like, I'm buying that one next. So figure out what's next. And I go on what I call like missions, like they're goal missions. What do I want? When do I want to buy? And let's go get it. And so it's what do you want? And then no vision boards. It's just know the next thing that you want outside of business bills, personal bills, entertainment, travel. That's what I want. And so next, let's go. How do we break this down? So most of you that listen are in real estate. If you're in any type of business where you can go and your work can go get you more commissions or more sales, this is much easier to do. If you're at a salary job, this would be much more challenging to do, and I think can limit a lot of where you're going financially in life. Nothing wrong with that. It just is what it is. And so now it's what's the total? Like, let's say you found out what you had to have: business every month, personal every month, entertainment every month, travel every month. And then now you say, ooh, I want to put $100,000 down on an investment property this year. And so now we'd start doing the math. You're like, okay, so I've got to now, okay, so I got to have this much money a month times that by 12. So I've got to have that coming through to cover all of my stuff to live my life. And then I want to have that extra $100,000 to buy the investment property. So now what's that total that you need to make at the end of the year? Okay. What's the total? And then now here's where we got to start factoring in some taxes. So let's say you come up with a total, figure out what your tax bracket is. Is it 20, 25, 30, 35%? And I add that in. I want to know this is how much I need to accomplish what I want to accomplish. I then take how much I'm probably going to pay in taxes, add that on top. And then now I know what's the total that I need to make to get this done. Life by design. Then I go and I figure out what my average price point of home I sell is. And then I say, okay, this is my average price point of home. This is my average commission. My average co-broke on commission. This is my average total commission. So I now know this is how much I need to make in commissions. This is how much my average commission check is. And I do some math right there. And then once I have the math, game on. Now, here is the deal. This happens every year that I do this. Almost every year that I do this, you look at that and you start thinking, whoa, like that's a different version of me. Like the person who sells 20 homes a year and 60 homes a year, the person who sells 60 homes a year and 100 homes a year, the person who sells 150 homes and not 100 anymore. Like you're turning into new versions of yourself. Like there's no way around it. Like you're turning into new versions of yourself. So it starts to worry you. Now the goal planning of this, the life by design section where you're putting down everything that you want, that's the fun part. Then you get into this stuff where it's like, whoa, like that's a lot of homes. And you start realizing like this is what I'm gonna have to do to achieve it. And then we start breaking it down and like but this is life by design. There are some people that wake up their whole entire life and whatever the world gives them is what they get. There's other people that go out and they're like, no, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to get. And those people, it's a rare group of people, but it's so cool to see where they can just turn it on and go get what they want. So it's what's the total of all this? How many units do you have to sell to reach that? And then now I want to go into scoreboards. The scoreboards are where me and my buddy were talking on the phone the other day. He was like, hey, how I was listening to one of your podcasts from back in the day, and you were talking about a corkboard kind of scoreboard that you had. And I really did. Like that's what I did at the time. I don't anymore, but I totally remember the corkboard scoreboard. I actually threw it away probably about 2 weeks ago. It was still in my office. Now I do this through spreadsheets, but you've got to have a scoreboard. You have to, like, if you're trying to reach that goal, you've got to have a scoreboard. So you always know what the scoreboard, and the scoreboard is to know gas or brakes. Gas or brakes. That's all I think of when I look at a scoreboard is gas or brakes. It's, do I need to put the gas on right now? Or do I need, or can I put the brakes on? I'm not saying like put the brakes on, like, oh, I don't want work anymore. It's just there are times in a year where you might look at your scoreboard and say, hey, I'm up by 3. And you might look at it and say, you know what, I really don't want to work today. And I have to say, if you look at your scoreboard and you don't feel like working that day and you don't have appointments that day, you're good. Like the scoreboard tells you, there's no emotions to this, there's no feelers. It's scoreboard. And I don't really want to work today and I'm up by 3. I'm not going to work today. I'm going to go sit by the pool, or I'm going to go to the coffee shop, or I'm just going to go up north and travel. Or you may wake up and say, do you know what? I don't really feel like working today. You go look at the scoreboard, no emotions. You look at the scoreboard, that's logical. And you're like, I'm down by 2. That might be a day where you have to say, you know what? I don't want to work today, but I'm down by 2. So I either live a life by design or I live a life by default. And so default is me now taking off knowing that I'm down by 2. And living a life by design is I'm going to go work today, even though I don't want to, because I'm down by 2. If the scoreboard is to help you with your feelers, and I go through this all the time, and there are days that I even lose, but that is how I feel that I have to operate in order to play ball. Is I want to have a scoreboard. I want to know if I'm winning and if I'm losing. And I'm so thankful for this. I don't look at other people's scoreboards as much anymore. I don't care. That's your scoreboard. Know if you're losing, know if you're winning. I'm looking at my scoreboard. I used to, look at other people's scoreboards and think, oh man, I'm down based on where they're trying to get to, or I'm up based on what they're trying to get to. Until I realize, like, whether I'm down or up on other people's scoreboards, it's my scoreboard. Like, I have to live with myself when I'm older on what did I do to try to get to where I wanted to go. So have a scoreboard. It keeps you honest. It lets you know when you can chill, when you have to press forward and put the gas on, and then have some form of accountability that you can go to somebody. Real estate, what I have noticed is lonely leadership. If you're in a spot where you're at your home office and you're trying to sell a lot of real estate, and you wake up every day and you've got to self-motivate yourself and there's not a lot of energy around, you've got to have some type of accountability. And so I have this in a few ways in my life. I've got a few friends that I have hold me accountable. I've got a few groups that I belong to that hold me accountable. I'm getting one today at 1:00. I've got a group that holds me accountable to my goals. Tomorrow I have one at 1:00. I got a different group for a different goal that I have. And then I've got a text message thread with a few friends on another goal that I have. Accountability. I have, like, right now 3 things that I'm working on, and I've got accountability for each one. So that doesn't have to be a coach. It could just be a friend that is not going to listen to your excuses. It could be, like a Zoom group that you're a part of that I do every single week. And if you want, reach out to me. I'll let you join in those so that you can have some accountability. But that's what today's show is about. And this all started, guys, because of the few conversations I've had this week on finances. And here's the deal. I always like to note this. I go through all of this stuff as well. It's just a show where I have a microphone and I talk out loud about what my goals are, what my challenges are, what my successes are. And so I always want people to know that just because I'm talking into the microphone doesn't mean that I don't go through things. But this is how I've processed, there's 2 things that this has helped me process. As I have no personal debt in my life, outside of I shouldn't say no personal debt. I have no like consumer debt in my life. I have, all my homes on mortgages. I'm fine with that, with the interest rates, but I have no debt in my life outside of the mortgages. I have 20 rental properties that I've purchased over the last, 5 years. And I've got a few more things I'm working on right now that I want to do, that I've got a life by design plan set up. And so, like I said, I'm going through it. This is just how I processed it. So it was really cool because when one of my friends hit me up and said, hey, I listened to your corkboard episode and I want to know how you're doing this now. It was, hey, I'm doing it. The philosophy is the same exact way. Like, my brain thinks of this the same way, My board that I actually use now, a little bit different. It's not a cork board anymore, it's a spreadsheet, but same process. And so that's the reason for this show. I want anybody who needs help in any of this, life by design conversation, reach out to me. I mean, hit me up on Instagram, send me a message. I love to have this conversation and just help the best I can. But thank you guys for listening today to my thoughts, and I hope you all have a good day.